So the construction industry, right, is not an industry, as I put up here, not completely an industry. People say the construction industry, but in reality, it involves a lot of people who aren't in construction, as it turns out. So the construction industry could be said to be a process. It's a process that's shared across multiple industries. And if you think about it, you have lenders who are involved in the construction industry. Jacob used to work at a company called Grainger. Grainger is a distributor of supplies. Equipment companies are in the construction industry, but sometimes equipment companies are providing equipment for other things, not just construction. Developers, governments, your state and federal government has arms that are managing projects. Schools have like a construction division for facilities. They have facilities division. They're in the construction industry. So contractors and subcontractors are in construction, right? But when you think about the construction industry, you think about those people a lot, but you forget about some of the other people. And the other thing that's interesting about this space is that it involves all walks of life as well. I say this a lot, which is it could be the range and the spectrum of sophistication can go from a mom and pop. Some of you people who, I know we have some new salespeople who got on the phone yesterday, probably ran across a lot of people who are very sophisticated, you know, and they have to work with very sophisticated companies at times. And so you have this sophistication gap, or the multinational corporations versus national corporations versus family businesses. It's got this whole spectrum of different walks of life who come onto the project. So the other thing about construction, we're going to go into construction 101 a little bit in the beginning, is that there's different types of jobs. So if you make, there's one way of kind of thinking about jobs. You have jobs that are simple. You have jobs that get complex. Sometimes the complexity is because of the complexity of the work, such as like in doing levee work. Even though levee work and road work are complicated projects, they actually don't involve many people. It's usually, you know, done by a small number of contractors. They're doing some road work on Nashville with my house, and it's probably one contractor. Pretty sophisticated work. There may be some engineers associated with it, but if you're working on a skyscraper, here you have a complex project that's going to involve tons and tons and tons of parties. So then you have this spectrum of they got a few parties or a lot of parties. Another thing about construction is they have different types of jobs from the standpoint of how they're regulated, I guess, or how they're classified. So we separate them here at zlien. All the job site people are here. There was nobody from job site in the last session, but you guys know this well. And when a job comes into the system, it's got to be, you got to determine what type of job it is. So there are different types of projects: residential, commercial, state, federal. This makes a difference. That means that you know, the federal government manages their jobs a different way. The state governments manage their jobs a different way. A homeowner who's building one house for the first time or is doing a small renovation is going to manage their job a lot different than the person who's building another McDonald's, one of 1,000 McDonald's that they're going to build this year, which is different than the person that's building the skyscraper, which is probably the only project they work on. That developers probably only work on that one project. So the types of projects change the dynamics of what the regulations are, what the documents need to be, but also the dynamics of the people that are going to be involved. The industry itself is really, really big. It's a really, really big industry. It's globally, it's 11% of the GDP. And this is underestimating it, I think, because this really looks at construction, and it doesn't, if your grandmother does a basement remodel, it's probably not in these numbers. Things like that aren't in the numbers. So there's a lot of, it's a very, very, very big business. In addition to that, this is looking at the growth that we expect in trillions of dollars across the construction industry globally. We're right here right now at about 10 or 11 trillion dollars. It's going to grow. It's one industry that's going to grow really no matter what, because there's a population growth that is coming no matter what. And these people have to live places. They're going to live in urban environments. Regardless of what happens to the US economy or the European economy or the Chinese economy, construction is going to grow across the globe. So we're going to switch gears from the construction industry and some basics about it to the payment process, because payment in construction is very stressful. And so why is it stressful? And what's unique about construction payment versus just payment? So for this, I have to give the example of ordering t-shirts. Some of you have these t-shirts. We order t-shirts sometimes. But now I'm going to I don't think we get them anymore. But what we do is we give them a call. We don't order this many, but in this example, this lady down here gets a call, hey, we need 4,000 white t-shirts, please. And the other person says, that's great. It's going to be $2 per shirt at that volume. Would you like it? If so, we're going to send you an invoice. So he creates an invoice. He sends an invoice. He puts it into his system, which may be like QuickBooks. We have Colin here. We switch from QuickBooks to NetSuite here. So we put in the NetSuite. And it says, invoice to lady who ordered t-shirts, $8,000. She sends the invoice. He sends the invoice to the lady who ordered the invoice. And she puts it into the accounts. She goes in. She puts it into her accounts payable. Here's my bill for $8,000. Then she says, I need to send this guy money. So she sends the guy $8,000. $8,000 goes up to the guy who billed it. He says, we received the $8,000, and he ships the t-shirts. And the t-shirts go here, right? That's what it's like. Construction's a lot different than that. I mean, this is how commerce works. This is virtually everything that you buy is bought like this. Virtually everything you go to Walmart, everything in Walmart was bought like this in some way. There may be credit extended or what have you, but this is how AR and AP works. Every financial system in the world works this way: AR and AP, accounts receivable, accounts payable. If you have somebody has an accounts receivable, somebody else has an accounts payable. It's always there. So construction has a lot more complexities going on. One is that it completely flips this whole idea of we pay, then I get the t-shirts. It's like instead you get t-shirts, then you pay. So let's think about how this works, right? You want 4,000 t-shirts? Sure, we'll send those over right away. A couple of weeks from now, after you receive the t-shirts, we're going to send you an invoice that you need to approve. And we think it's going to be $2 per shirt, but something may come up. And if something comes up, we'll just have to adjust the price, and you'll see that on the invoice that we send you in a few weeks. That's what construction does, which seems bizarre, right? When you think about it in the context of buying t-shirts, you would never expect that. The other thing is that it requires detailed proof of work and materials. So it's not just sending an invoice and then receiving a bill back. Now you're talking about a very detailed payment request system. In part of this payment application, if you went to Topher's payment application, let you learn, a lot of stuff has to be attached to that. Yeah, you need to tell me how much you're owed, but you also need to put pictures to show me that you did the work. You need to attach the payroll records of the people you paid. I need to see the invoices from the supplier who you got your supplies from. I need a lien waiver from you. I need a lien waiver from the supplier. I also need your certificate of insurance, and if you're exempt from sales tax, I need the sales tax certificate. I also need you to use a specific form to get it notarized, and I need you to fold the corner. Right? That's what happens with the payment application, much different than an invoice. That's complex. Then you have to manage a lot of different stakeholders. It is not just the buyer and the seller. The invoice has to trickle up from the bottom all the way to the top and go through all these layers, and then the money has to take the exact opposite course. So in theory, the supplier should send one invoice to the sub-sub. The sub-sub should be sending 2 invoices and 2 lien waivers to the sub. The sub should be sending 3 invoices and 3 lien waivers to the general contractor, and so on and so forth. And all the photographs and all this, whatever proof, proof of delivery of the materials or whatever it is, depending on the sophistication of the job and the sophistication of the party, this just gets more sophisticated. This is all this complexity, it creates stress. And that stress is in a few different forms. One is this stress of, am I doing this right? People are constantly wondering whether you're doing this right because there's so much to do, and the ball moves a lot of the times as to what's required for that job. They're also stressed about some surprise coming up. Am I going to be surprised by something on this project? And they're stressed about how do they protect themselves against something going wrong. As we can see in the next 2 slides, the reason why they have this fear is because they're worried about something that's going to go wrong that's outside of their control, which is different in the t-shirt situation. In the t-shirt situation, everything's in my control. I just send the t-shirts and I receive t-shirts. If you don't get paid, or if I send you an invoice for t-shirts and you don't pay it, then you don't get the t-shirts. It's a very simple exchange. Otherwise, maybe I give you credit and then you get the t-shirts and then you don't pay me. And then I think, damn, that company sucks. They didn't pay their bills. Right? But it's different in construction because it may not even be that. The complexity makes payments slow just by itself, without any ill intent. the payment is just slow. It takes an average of 73 days to get paid in construction. That creates more financial stress and it creates working capital problems. But let's go through a theoretical subcontractor and think about how this works. So for one subcontractor, in this chart, he has a $60,000 job. This sub is going to do that job over the course of 6 months. He's going to get paid $10,000 per month. Very simple situation. So he does his work first, then he bills, right? So on month one, the subcontractor bills. He sends his notice. Here's your little legend of all the shit that he's doing. So he's doing his work over 6 months. Then he sends his notice on day one, right? He does $10,000 of work in month one. This is not theoretical work. This is money that he pays to his suppliers and money that he pays to his contract, to his laborers. The subcontractor's profit margins maybe 5% or less. So if he does $10,000 of work, he spends what, $9,500 of cash in order to do that work. So this is money he puts up. So he does that month one. Month two, after he does the work, in the second month, he gets the bill for it. And at that point, he sends his first payment application, but he's also done $20,000 of work, and he's gotten paid $0. Now he has to wait 73 days for that first bill, for the first $10,000 to come in. So he waits the 73 days. He doesn't get paid the first $10,000 until after month 4, when he's already $40,000 into the hole. That $40,000 turned, then he gets paid $9,000. He didn't get paid $10,000. You don't know why he didn't get paid $10,000?
Didn't approve the full amount.
That could have happened, but not this time. It could happen. Yeah, this presumes that everything's done well, that the approvals go smoothly. This is like the best case scenario up here. Because of retainage, you've heard retainage. The average, most subcontractors, a very high percentage of subcontractors have retainage held from them, and the average is 10%. And what that means is that every time you bill me, I'm going to take 10%. I'm going to put it on the side, and you're going to wait for that until the whole job's completed, and then we'll give it to you. So remember, they only have a 5% profit margin. So he gets $9,000 in month 5, even though he did $50,000 of work. And then he's waiting for payout 2, payout 3, payout 4, payout 5, payout 6. So down here, after the work's complete, when he's totally finished, he did $60,000 of work, he's been paid $18,000. Then he has to wait a month, and he's paid $27,000. He waits a month, he's paid $36,000. He waits another month. After the work's done, he's paid $45,000. And so on and so forth until he gets to the end, when he's got to wait for the whole project to complete to get his remaining $6,000, which was held from him in retainage. This is an extraordinarily high working capital burden. And in addition to that, as you guys know, a subcontractor doesn't do one job at a time. A subcontractor may be on 10 jobs at a time, or 50 jobs at a time, 100 jobs at a time. And that exasperates this cash problem because he's having this kind of cash flow issue across, multiply that times 10. If you want to be in this scenario and you want to do 10 jobs, well, you would have $400,000 of loose cash around for situations if all goes well. What typically happens is subcontractors are getting paid on one job and they're using it to float the next job. They start to have a Ponzi scheme, but that's kind of the nature of the beast. Something else that's interesting up here is the lien period, which is red. Because we tell people, we'll give them a call and say, hey, you should always protect your lien rights. So look at this situation, right? His lien period, which is 60 days here, but it could just as very well be 90 days. It expires before the subcontractor even gets able to be paid. There's nothing going wrong for the subcontractor, but his lien rights are now expiring while he's still owed money and could be owed money, and there's nothing wrong. So it's a real complex decision for subcontractors sometimes. When they are owed money, their lien window is expiring, but they're flying really close to the sun. They're trying to get the money, but they may make the decision to not file lien because nothing's gone wrong. There's a problem. So there's another complexity, which is around, if you flip this and think about the general contractor, now you have the general contractor having to manage all that stuff on all the subs. So one general contractor working on a skyscraper may have 100 subcontractors. Those subcontractors every month are sending them these complex payment applications. They have to track these lien windows. They have to do all this stuff to manage all of the work that's being done on the project. It presents a different complexity. This complexity makes payments slow, causing more financial stress. And again, the general contractor has to do this across multiple jobs. These two slides are representative, the simple jobs. If it's just somebody painting a house, it's a lot simpler than this. But there's a spectrum of how it scales up and gets more complex. And this also only looks at subs and generals and the relationship between them. But what's not shown in this graph is that you have the lender managing this with the property owner managing this with the general's managing it with the sub, as we've shown here. But then the sub is managing it with sub-subs, and the sub-subs are managing it with suppliers and equipment providers. So you have all this management all the way up and down the chain, all causing this thing to get complex. And one thing that's really stressful for companies is surprises, right? The surprise that something could go wrong. Everybody's worried about surprises that may pop up in the payment chain because what they are doing is they're managing, the sub is managing the general is managing the sub, but they're worried about all the other stuff. And what are the other subs doing? Are the other subs getting paid? Are the other subs going to cold mock project up? Is the lender going to hold up the payment? Is the property owner going to hold up the payment? Are we going to get a lien from a supplier? Is the sub paying the supplier? Who is the supplier? All these things are worry for people who are not only managing the stress of the complex payment process itself, but the stress of all the different parties. So what's interesting, and I meant y'all have seen this probably before, is that there are a lot of tools that help stakeholders collaborate to get the job done. When it comes to like making sure that the project gets completed, there's a lot of things for people to use, a lot of technology for people to use to make the project get completed successfully. Because when you get on a job and you are going to do work, the questions you have in your mind is, how do we make sure this project gets done on time? How do we make sure that we do this project right, that we don't make a mistake? But off the job site, that's not the question. That's not the stress. The stress on the job site is how is it done well and how is it done on time. The stress off the job site is how do we protect ourselves against surprises. And that's rooted in fear, not rooted in the collaboration of what you want to do on the job site. So off the job site, what you see is that people are out-positioning, they're fighting to out-position the party that they're directly connected to in the payment chain. And one reason they're doing that is because they can't control anyone else. The lender can't control the supplier. The general can control the sub, but the general can't control the supplier. The general can't control the sub-sub. And so they're positioning with, not only that's accurate, but they're positioning themselves because they can't control anyone else. It's just much different than here. A much, much different situation going on. So it's a question, right? Is this a zero-sum game? You know what that means? A zero-sum game, it means like there has to be a winner, there has to be a loser. The general has to be the winner, and so they can force all the subcontractors to take on all the risk, and they just leverage them because they want to protect themselves. And the only way for them to escape the fear is to make a protective system for themselves. And then the other person obviously says, well, shit, if that's their only way, well, then my only way is to protect myself. And so you keep shifting and shifting and shifting and shifting until, somebody's left with the hot potato, and that's just the way it is. Or is there a better way? Is there hope for this? We're here to help. There may be hope. This is in the order of your appearance, by the way. So there are 3 pillars of construction payment stress, if you think about this. And you break it down, what's causing people stress? And we break it into fears, frictions, and fires. It's fear that people are going to have surprises in the payment chain. And the flip side of this, like the thing that improves this is visibility. If you can see everybody and you have visibility on everybody, you can start to erode away some of the fear that you don't know what's happening in the payment chain. The second pillar of payment stress is frictions. It's frictions in the paperwork to protect against all the risk in the payment chain. All the payment work that we do, the payment applications, the lien waivers, the notices, the job sheets. The job sheets are a little bit trying to figure out this stuff. But almost all the paperwork we do is all done to administer, to help people protect themselves against the risk in the payment chain. Otherwise, they would just send an invoice. That makes sense? They would just send an invoice like they do with a t-shirt. All this other shit is all because of the payment chain and the risk that they have to people, to other people in the chain. And the final thing is fires. Fires erupt because there's no cooperation across the payment chain. An example of this is a supplier who may do work with us. They're calling the subcontractor saying, you got to pay your bill. And the subcontractor is saying, wait for the money. They call them again, they call them again, they call them again, because that's the collector's job, is to call the subcontractor. After 3 months, they say, if you can't pay this by Tuesday, I'm gonna file a lien. And they wait till Tuesday. And that's why we have these stupid pull reports. You know, you get the pull queue. It's like, we're gonna wait till the 15th of the month, and then I'm gonna pull it. I'm gonna pull it on the 15th at 11:50 in the morning. And they're doing that with the subcontractor, their customer. But once they file that lien is not a lien against their customer, it liens against the job. That gets the owner, the lender, and the general contractor involved. The owner, lender, and the general contractor would love to have been involved and would have loved to know that it was up to the subcontractor to pay by 11:50 on the morning of the 15th before this fire erupted and caused them a big problem, because those liens cause a very big problem for the general contractor. But they never knew, because there's no collaboration across the payment chain. Like the lenders and the owners, they never talk, and the general contractors don't talk to the subs. The subs don't talk to the suppliers. Or the generals don't talk to the suppliers. That's an example of collaboration that's missing. And so you have these fires erupt because people are only interacting with people against that they're directly connected to. There's existing solutions out there. Existing solutions, though, if you look at the payment and accounting, the lien services that we sometimes come up against, the project management, they all miss on what's creating the stress. They miss on the fear, the frictions, and the fires, and they're all, you know, they don't help with the chain. They only help here. All the solutions only help with these two elements. Another way of looking at it is that existing solutions miss on the visibility and collaboration. If you think about the fears, frictions, and fires, and what the parallel to that is, like, see everybody and get visibility, make the administration of paperwork easier, and workflows easier, and to help collaborate with people up and down the chain. The existing solutions, not only do they ignore the chain, but they also ignore the collaboration and the visibility. All the existing solutions are kind of cluttered up inside of this administration circle. So this all starts with why we exist and what our purpose is. I just did a training the other day, and I think I probably said it, which is we have this core value of be passionate about fairness. That serves as a lighthouse for our company, so that we build something that is got this passion around building a fair tool, a fair solution, so that we can ultimately achieve this purpose of the power of the enabling, empowering people to get what they've earned. If we didn't have that core value, we didn't have that purpose, we would just build an administration tool, right? Because there's a lot of administration. We can solve a lot of workflow problems, and we do. You know, there's a lot of our tool, there's a lot of our platform that does administration, and we have a good function of sending out documents and helping people manage some of the paperwork that is hard for them, that is messy for them. And our tool does help people with just the relationship that they have with the other party. We want to improve that, but that's not our ambition, and it's not what we're working on it in full. And that's why we have, and that's guided by this lighthouse, because there's tons of work we can do around this. There's tons of ways that we can make the administration and dealing with the lien paperwork better. But we're building a broader solution that is trying to fill in the gaps of visibility and fill in the gaps of the collaboration. We're going to talk about that briefly in a second. There's a good old Kathleen quote. Got to put her in everywhere. The reason why I put her in this is because of those words that I always focus on: Goliath and tyranny. If you were to selling T-shirts and you didn't get paid, I mentioned this a couple minutes ago, for the T-shirts, you say that scumbag company didn't pay me, right? You would not say this is tyranny. right? And that company, Goliath, is just killing us, not paying for t-shirts. There's a different emotional framework around the payment problem and the stresses that are involved in construction payment because of all the elements we discussed. What zlien does is, if you look at the surface of what we're doing currently, we're removing stress for people and for construction stakeholders by giving them confidence, or giving them the confidence, or enable them to collaborate and have confidence that the payment documents that they have to deal with are done right and exchanged up and down the payment chain. As we evolve, we draw frequently this analogy to Netflix. And maybe we'll tie some of this together. The way that we used to watch movies, obviously, was used to rent things at a store, at Blockbuster. And right now in the construction space, the way that this whole pain is resolved is people are manually tracking payment documents and leveraging one another in the people that they control. They're trying to control their risk and their problems and their fears outside of their circle of influence and outside the payment chain by managing everything manually. What we've been trying to do over the past 5 years is get people to just put these damn things in digital form in some way or another. When you have it in digital form, you can invite people into them, right? You can add collaborators to them. You can help with the visibility around who's on the job. You can help to start turning these documents, which is just data. It's just data that they need. You can help start like pushing them towards a digital version of this. It doesn't solve the problem in full, but it's a problem that needs to be solved. Eventually, though, we want to stream movies. Like eventually, there's no reason why the lender has to pay the general contractor, has to pay the owner, who has to pay the general, who has to pay the sub, who has to pay the supplier. There's no reason for that. The reason for that is there's no way for them to do it otherwise. So their solution, the industry solution to the complexity of having all these parties involved, is they've set up this bizarre system where you have to do the work before you get paid, then you have to bill for it, and you have to bill for it with these complex documents, and then you have to wait because it has to go up to the people who are going to have the money distributed. Those people send out inspectors. The inspectors come, make sure the work's done. Then they go report back and say the work's done, and then the money starts to come down. And there's a lot of places for things to go wrong there, but it's the best system that we can come up with because there's no way to figure out that the work's done and that the materials are delivered otherwise. There's no way to make sure that, to make payment any different. But in the future, there will be ways. There'll be ways like for technology to track whether the materials hit the job site. Once the materials hit the job site, you can pay the people for the materials, right? But if you can track whether the subcontractor has done the work and they have interest in technology that is like taking videos of job sites, watching people work. And as the people work and install things, the videos say, oh, that's installed. You can pay somebody right after they worked for that. You start to break down the barriers. The one complexity with that is not just the technology, but the culture of the entire industry. Because now you have to enable the lender to give the money directly to the supplier. And that requires them being able to give money to somebody they don't have a contract with. So this is a far, far way out. But the point being that, right now where we see the world is we understand the complexity of the construction industry. We understand how there's sophisticated parties and unsophisticated parties. We know it's going to continue to get bigger. We know that the technology is going to continue to blossom. We know why payments are stressful, and we know why payments are so complex in construction. And we kind of see how that's going to erode over time. But until it does, what we have to keep doing is we have to keep building our tool with that lighthouse of where we want to go. And we have to start filling in the elements. How can we help people manage the things outside of their control and see the things outside of their control? How can we add visibility and collaboration around the entire payment chain? How can we take these documents that they're using, digitize them, and start to push back against the leverage these documents entail, and eventually get to a world where we're streaming movies. So that's it. That's 30 minutes.